Welcome to Insight Marketing Success, the podcast where marketing knowledge meets real-world experience, from vision to execution.
Welcome to IMS. Today we have Jens Nielsen, and he's a very interesting person. So, Jens, I had the opportunity to meet with you and chat before, but for our audience, tell us who you are.
Yeah, hi there. I'm Jens Nielsen. I am a commercial real estate investor and coach and business consultant. I live here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and so that's very high level. And I'm happy to go into my journey and so on. We have invested in over 2,500 apartment units and hundreds of thousands of square feet of commercial real estate and so on. So been quite active here in the last 10 years.
Wonderful. So let's talk about your educational journey first. Where did you go to school and how did you get to be who Jens Nielsen is today?
Yeah, so I came to the United States 30 years ago in 1996. I can't even, yeah, that's 30 years ago. Came here from Denmark and, did the traditional W-2 route. Went to school here. I was living in Maryland then and got, an undergrad degree and a graduate degree in computer science and worked in, telecommunication and IT for 25 plus years. Basically, that was my career. Different places from large corporations to startups to local governments to Native American tribes. So I tried everything, but decided in my mid 40s that it was time to start making a shift. At that point, that's when the real estate started to capture my attention.
Wonderful. So you came from Denmark and made your life into the U.S. As an immigrant in New Mexico, of all places. It has
No,
to
I
be very
started.
different from.
I didn't start and moving to New Mexico because that would have been a little bit too big of a change. No, I started out on the East Coast in Maryland. Was there for 10 years and then moved out to the Southwest. Been living in both New Mexico and Colorado here for the last 20 years. So I really love it out here because
Yeah.
the sun shines and it's wide open spaces.
Yes, 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 I understand. Wonderful. All right. So let's talk about when you first started in your real estate career and so forth, a marketing challenge that you had, and how do you overcome it?
Yeah, when it comes to marketing, I think the biggest piece there is, when we do a real estate deal is we need to have investors, right? Because we need to have the deal and then we need to have investors in order to make it a success. And how do you market, how do you market yourself as a real estate, somebody raising capital for real estate? That's not always easy because you can't, depending on the different rules, the SEC rules and stuff, you can't just advertise left and right and everywhere, right? So you have to do it in a subtle way, but still get the message out, right? So it started with a lot of, grassroots, if you will, right? So the marketing was through a local meetup, it was through meeting people in person, right? And then that started expanding into, being a guest on podcast and posting more on social media and so on, right? But not in a very pushy, in a very inviting people to a conversation, if you will.
Well, okay, that piques my attention. I understand what you're saying, but was your approach to be educating people on the opportunities of real estate, or what was the approach of your podcast or your message?
Yeah, absolutely, right. Education first, because you're not selling $20 widgets on Amazon, right? Where you need a huge volume. You're selling, high dollar investments. So people need to be educated and informed about that. So the education piece was, through running a local meetup, right? We talk about real estate investing or going on a podcast and talking about the benefits and the risks in real estate investing. And then also going, on the social media, but all about education, right? Remember during the pandemic, I would host weekly webinars on different topics and so on. That's just the education piece. And I'd always been really interested in education first, right? I'm not a the typical car salesman, right? Where it's about, do you want this in red or blue, right? No, it's a lot about education because I want to make sure that my investors are well educated so they understand the risks and the benefit of these types of investments.
Okay. So in the process of your career, you obviously have had some successes and you have, a lot of properties, but they were also, let's call them learning experiences where, what you thought and invested in marketing didn't really work out. Tell us about one of those
Yeah,
lessons.
so you're talking more about how the marketing didn't work or the challenges I had about marketing?
A specific time where you invested into marketing and it didn't work and you scratch yourself and you go, oh, it didn't work, but I learned this.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest challenge we always have, right, is we have to go out there and find the deal and get it under contract and start moving forward, and then we kind of hope that we have enough investors to close the deal, right? That's always the challenge. So that can be very hard, right? Because you don't know how your investors are and their current financial situation, right? So I think what we learned early on is like if you are raising money, if you're doing deals, you got to really be out there often. You got to really share what's going on. You really got to invite people to that conversation, right? So I think the biggest lessons we've learned there is like don't wait to the last minute. Don't assume you have a bunch of investors, right? Continue that conversation so that people, and sometimes, there may be several months or many months between deals. Don't give up, right? Don't stop putting your message out there, right? So I write regular newsletters and so on to make sure that my investors know that something is happening.
Okay, Ian, for my knowledge, let me understand how this works. You find a property, or you find a space where you want to develop a property, and then with the characteristics that you think that it will make money at a certain level. And then you gather the investors to be able to close the deal. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very good. I just wanted to make sure that I understood the process, for me and for our audience as well. All right. How do you approach storytelling in your webinars and in your presentations in what you do right now?
Yeah, no, I love that, right? Because every property has a story. Every property has some sort of characteristic that you need to connect with people. It's not like, well, if you invest in the stock market, right? If you invest in, Apple or Google or, some big company, you already know a lot about that company from following them in the media and so on, right? So you feel like, okay, I like Apple products, I'm going to invest in Apple, right? That makes sense. Now it's a little bit different because you don't know about, such a certain property in a certain city. So we always have to sell. I think there's three things we're selling, right? One is we're selling the team. Who is on the team and what is their track record? What is their experience? What do they bring to this deal that is going to, help ensure success? Then the second part is, right, we sell the vision of this project, like, hey, we're going to improve it, we're going to raise the rents, we're going to do all these different things. That's selling the story of the project. And then at the end, we're also selling a story of potential returns to the investors, right? We give them both that emotional certainty around, well, this sounds like a great team, a great property, and then the logical certainty about, the returns that people can expect if things go according to plan and so on, right? So that's how we approach it. It's always trying to do, because then, some people really curious about the project and what we're going to do. Some people are more curious about the numbers and return profile and so on.
Okay. So what is the biggest trend you see in marketing today in your industry?
Yeah, what there was a lot of flashy people, 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? But buy a property and buy a Ferrari next day and stuff like that. There's a lot of that flashy, showing off and stuff. I don't think that really works anymore because people just get turned off. So it has moved to, I think, more the educational piece, right? We continue to educate clients, or investors, we continue to really go deep into what they need to learn, right? Because there's risk in everything we do, and the more educated people are, the better decisions they can make. So that's what I kind of seeing is, education and so on, because informed consumers can make a better choice versus something flashy, right? So that's why, I continue to write my newsletter, speak at events, run my own meetup and so on to really continue that educational piece of it, which I think that seems to work for us.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the ideal investor for you, from net worth to whatever. Tell us who your ideal investor would be.
Yeah, so we tend to, work with busy professionals, right? People that make good money, they have a good job, right? They're a doctor, a lawyer, a business owner, or something like that, right? They also realize that they want to get exposure to real estate, but they don't have time to go out and necessarily do their own deal or find their own deal. So we want to partner with those types of people and say they can still get all the benefits of real estate investing. They don't have to do the work, right? Because and also they have to have quite often $1 million in net worth and so on, and have the capacity to put 50, 100, or $200,000 into a real estate deal. Because again, it's not we're not selling $20 widgets, right? So just having enough disposable income to be able to do that. And some of my best investors have been those doctors and lawyers that can do 50, 100K year after year, right? Because they make good money and they don't know exactly where to put their capital. So that's the type of clients that we want, right? Someone that's educated, they know that they know that they want to get exposure to real estate, but don't want to do the work themselves.
Okay. Interesting. Have you used a lot of automation in your projects?
No, I mean, I think the biggest automation that we tend to be using is mainly just, automating, our newsletters, automating, getting on podcasts and so on, right? I am changing my marketing, strategy and so on and hiring some teams around that. So hopefully we will get more automation. And it's been pretty old school for me. It's, it's probably time for me to start changing a little bit, right? Because
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
think there are definitely opportunities that we can put into place on the automation side there.
Okay. Very good. So now let's talk about the person. Jens Nielsen, the person. So let's imagine that you go to a restaurant and you are in one of those booths and you are sitting down and suddenly you start hearing voices that are familiar to you. And you realize it's your three best friends talking about you. What would you hope they say about you?
Yeah, I hope that they say I'm a caring person, a friend, somebody that's fun to hang out with, but can also be, serious. I hope that they say I am, somebody that they enjoy hanging out with, somebody they enjoy going on adventures with and being outside, and also somebody that they want to be in business with, right? Because I know I'm a trustworthy and honest person, and if it's a client, a coaching client, I say no, that hope that I hear them say that I've helped them change their life for better and so on. So those are probably some of the things that I would love to hear.
Yeah. All right. You and I both know that life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what's going to happen next, right? Uh, so when things get overwhelming and either a professional or personal basis, and sometimes it's both combined, and you reach your high levels of stress, how do you keep yourself grounded?
Through a lot of mental exercises, right? I really take care of myself. I get up very early in the morning and do my, strength workout and cardio workout, but then also my mental workout. I do, various journaling and use different apps to kind of really center myself, right? So this is work I've done for years. So that has really helped me take things in stride. Like when quote unquote bad things happen, I was like, okay, well, that's part of the business. We don't know if this is good or bad. It's just what happens. And that's really where I try to manage that, right? Have good partners, have people to bounce ideas off and so on, and not take it personally. I mean, as you said, you never know what life is going to bring you, But one thing you can control is your mindset and your attitude towards it.
Perfect. Okay, let's assume you have the opportunity to whisper in your ear at the time you graduated from college in Maryland, I believe that's what you said, and and you give some advice, wisdom that you have gained from, up to now. What would you tell yourself?
Start investing in real estate earlier. Believe in yourself that you can make it happen. I was always thought that I had to have a job, you know, from somebody else, but and now since I've been an entrepreneur, I was like, I can make stuff happen, right? So just trust your instincts on the ability to your own capability of creating your results for yourself.
Awesome. Jens, this is wonderful. Is there anything else you want our audience to know about you?
No, I mean, I think the other part is right. I focus on real estate investing. I also help people, with the mindset because you asked, how do I stay centered during stressful times? Well, through the right mindset. And some people can manage that themselves. Sometimes people need a coach to help them overcome challenges or grow to that next level, right? And that's something I really enjoy doing is working with individuals, coaching them to higher level of success. So that's really my other passion is coaching and mentoring people. So if anybody of your listeners are interested in some help, whatever they, to grow or reach the next level of success, I would love to talk to them.
And they can reach you at where?
JensNielsen.us. That's JensNielsen.us.
Awesome. Wonderful. Jens Nielsen, thank you very much for being part of IMS. Look forward to getting to know you better.
Thanks, Ricardo. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to Insight Marketing Success, where marketing knowledge meets real-world experience from vision to execution.